Gary, so this is your first time as a horror director, but you've also directed some adult film parodies like Silence of the Lambs and Halloween, I've noticed too, but this is your first mainstream horror film, correct?
Right, right. And I would actually, in my own mind, I suppose, this is my first genuine horror film because the parodies, they're sort of comical, and although there's a little tiny bit of blood and there are a few kill scenes, it's actually very mild and tempered because in the adult world, when you start to incorporate sort of violence with the love, as I call it, it's kind of a taboo. You don't want to mix the two, and some adult distributors don't want any kind of violence whatsoever associated with sex scenes, basically. So this is really, in the mainstream world, this is my first horror film.
What was some of your influences to become a filmmaker? What did you grow up watching that made you want to pursue this path?
I'm going to age myself here. I was in my teens, albeit my early teens, when the original Star Wars came out in 1977. A few years later, it was followed up by Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those two were pivotal. I also grew up watching a lot of spaghetti westerns, and I would say that if the dominant influence with respect to the style and tone of the projects that I created sort of influenced from the old Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. I love the kind of gritty, sweaty, unpolished, sort of Baroque style of those films. And actually, the original Star Wars kind of had a little bit of that. It was raw and gritty and very intense and epic. And that was it. I was smitten, and I had fortunately had a fantastic mother who was willing to go out and buy me a Super 8 camera, a film camera, and a 35 millimeter still camera, and the rest is history. I've been shooting films and still photography ever since.
Your film definitely has a raw, gritty, heavy metal Rob Zombie feel to it. A lot of Rob Zombie movies incorporate a lot of like metal music and have this just unbelievable grindhouse era style to them. And you definitely have a large, metal accompaniment for a soundtrack. Talk about some of the bands that accompany the movie.
Okay. So we're really good friends with Brian Slagle, who's the founder and CEO of Metal Blade Records. Metal Blade is iconic in the heavy metal, really, really heavy music world as a record label. They've been around since the 80s, the early 80s. And when we started putting the film together, and Brian, we mentioned we were going to do this film, he immediately said, I've got all these bands, let's get some of our music into your movie. And that really was sort of one of the catalysts for the tone of some of the scenes in the film. And we realized as this thing was evolving that we were going to stay close to our roots. It was going to be a sexy horror film. There are going to be great kill scenes with lots of gore, and it was going to be very intense heavy metal music. And so what we ended up going with was the Black Dahlia Murder. We have a track in there. We have a Legion, which again is another Metal Blade Records band, and we have Lizzie Borden. And Lizzie actually is a friend. He's a very good friend of Brian's. They grew up as kids together, really. And we knew Lizzie. We hung out with him quite a few times, and mentioned it, and he wanted to throw some music into the movie as well. And so that's how that kind of evolved. And since we were going for a really sort of, as we keep saying, this gritty 80s American slasher kind of horror film, it was just perfect. It's a great fit, when you're doing these sort of raw horror films and you introduce this really intense, strong, powerful, heavy metal music.
Tabitha, you get like filthy in this movie, like completely just covered in stuff, and there's makeup, and the nipples are covered in like tape. What was possibly the hardest part to film for you?
The hardest part for me of filming, I would have to say, is being a cannibal in a sense. Was eating my victims. I was consuming so much. I don't even know what it was. There are these like plasticky, rubbery bits that were inside of the guts mixture. Now, I did not swallow them, although maybe a couple got down. But they were in my teeth. So trying to get these, like, the guts out of my teeth every night was a challenge. The fake blood, you know, you're swallowing that, which was not toxic. I could drink that. But that would get down. So in the evening, when I would, you know, right as I was getting ready to fall asleep, I feel like all this, like, I know it's going to sound gross, but all this phlegm.
Yeah.
And I would hawk up fake blood. And I was telling Gary, I mean, I got to a point where I got scared. I was nervous because I'm like, why is this happening right now? I thought maybe, you know, I would have maybe digested it or something. But it kept coming up. So I was like, oh, you know, maybe we should call Tom Devlin, who is our special makeup effects person, who's amazing. I'm going to call Tom at like 2 a.m. and I'm about to cry. But it was fine. And Gary's like, it's fine. You'll be fine. You're not going to die. You're good. And I'm like, well, I still got to kill people in the morning, so I have to live for this. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And then the tape, yes. The tape on the nipples, that is a little bit tricky. Yeah. And it's in an X shape. So you're pulling it twice on each side. And you got to just tear that.
Nah.
Yeah. There's a couple times I was like, is my nipple still attached to my body? And it was, obviously.
Oh, but I can imagine it feel like your nipple being ripped off, and you're just like, oh, my nipples or whatever have made my career what they are.
Exactly, right? I need those, yeah.
Thank God they weren't hairy nipples.
Oh, my God.
Hairy. That would be a whole other movie. That'd be like a werewolf, like kind of a horror film and stuff. Okay.
But you get, like, it just looks like such a physically really hard, demanding role from what I saw that you had to do and the stuff that you were covered in. Is it any different than some of the more unbelievable things, really ridiculous positions that you have to get in other industries that you've been in?
I like how you put that. Actually, it was much easier than some of those other positions I used to be in, because those you're going for a while, and you're just like, leg cramp. I didn't really have leg cramps in there.
Oh my God, I've been on a set of one adult film, and I was bored to tears, and I'm like, looked over, and I was like, is it really like this? Is it just like regular filming? They're like, it is so boring.
I'm glad you said that, because what happens is, so I have a lot of friends who are rock stars throughout my career, and there's been many times back in the 90s, early 2000s, when I'd be shooting, and I'd have friends of mine who are rock stars say, come on, Tab, I want to come to the set. Come on. I'm like, okay. I said, as long as I'm not in them, because that would be weird. They're my friends. But I said, sure, come on down. You know, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be bored. You're gonna hate my guts after this. You're going to hate me. And every single time, without a doubt, 15 minutes would go by, the yawns would happen. Oh, great, now you ruined it for me. But you wanted to come to the set. I said, okay, sure. But yeah, every single time. Huh, Gary? Like, Gary knows this.
Oh,
yeah.
How
many times have we seen this?
It's very clinical.
Right.
More often than not. Although sometimes you'll have some sort of wild chemistry going on with one of those where it gets kind of crazy. But that's actually really rare. For the most part, though, you know, when you were talking about the adult movies here of, you know, the past, they're very, like I said, very clinical, really sort of sterile in a way, and really mapped out, blocked out in such a way that the actual filming process is fairly boring. In fact, we would actually, it's funny, quick note on that, many years ago, I had a deal that was, my shows were being shown on, they were softcore actually, but they were shown on DirecTV and a bunch of other platforms around, well, pay-per-view and whatnot. And so we were producing a whole bunch of these features that were softcore, and in the scenes, when we're actually shooting the love scenes, we would literally put 2 or 3 cameras in different positions and just let them roll. And it was so tedious in the editing of these things that what we would do is literally have them freeze, have the talent freeze while we're filming, cut, reposition the cameras, start them into the action before we rolled the cameras, then rolled the cameras. So we were literally doing in-camera edits, because in post-production, we didn't want to sit there and have to just sit for hours and hours and hours and hours of this footage. We would end up with long chunks of the show that were actually already edited while we were shooting them. That's how boring it was shooting those scenes.
And with softcore, you have to remember, there's no penetration. But you remember, like your grandma's little leg stocking that she would use, like a knee-high stocking. You use that on the male talent, and you use a giant Band-Aid on the female talent. So everybody's kind of covered. So it's not really going on. It's kind of rare if you ever saw something happen, like go down on a softcore set. So there's a lot of little tricks there.
How long have you guys been working together as a couple, and how long have you been married?
We've been working together for probably 15 or 16 years, and I think we're going on 14 years of marriage. 14?
Yeah, I think so. We forget.
Yeah, I think it's 14.
Because we're together 24/7, and sometimes, all right, so this is funny. So on Twitter, last anniversary, we got married on St. Patrick's Day, because I figured, okay, we can kind of both remember that day, right? So we got married on St. Patrick's Day, and I kept telling everybody, oh, it's 14 years, and it wasn't. It was 13. I was so wrong.
Yeah, what's the year?
So this is a horror movie. Do you guys have a particular horror movie that you absolutely love every year, and do you do anything for Halloween?
It's funny. I don't know. I mean, one that I love. I'm trying to think. I've always loved the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Like the first one's my favorite. Obviously, that's my first. Hills Have Eyes. He's always been a creepy as hell. My first horror film that I ever saw was Phantasm, and that screwed me up as a kid. That's when HBO. Remember when HBO came out? I don't know. You're probably not old enough to remember, but they had these little boxes, and you press the numbers. And my parents had gotten the box, and we weren't allowed to watch HBO unless they said we could, because they would check to see what was coming on. And I snuck it when I was a kid, and oh my gosh, that one really, truly messed me up as a kid.
And I think that for me, Hills Have Eyes for sure would be top. Suspiria, though. Are you hip to Suspiria?
I am. Dario Argento. Yep, the original and the soundtrack by Goblin.
You are familiar. Yes.
Yep, and Barbara Miglione has been on my show.
No kidding. That's awesome. That is a great classic film for those listeners who want to explore that sort of thing. And I'm a huge fan of European horror. I actually like a lot of European films in general, because a lot of times they break outside the box. I think with American cinema sometimes, and a lot of it has to do with the studio system and the way it works. And obviously, we lived and worked in Hollywood for a long time, so we understand it. Sometimes it's very confining, and you're sort of stuck in this sort of box of convention in terms of plot line, structure, and all of these things. And I think that sometimes with some of the international titles, they're much more willing to break outside the box, be a little bit more. I'll kind of mention an American director to give the example would be like a David Lynch, where they're more willing to be a little non-linear and a little bit unique, and let some shots saddle, be a little bit more mise-en-scène as opposed to super fast cutting all the time. I think that they can be grittier as well too, and so I really like that. I like really unique, interesting, thought-provoking kinds of films. On
set, did you ever have were you ever shooting a day and you lose the whole day to weather problems, or there was some audio issues that didn't quite pick up everything you wanted, or you lost half the we shoot on digital film nowadays, but the digital film sometimes can get corrupted?
Yeah, not on this project though. This project we didn't have a lot of that, primarily because most of the production was interiors and a soundstage, so it was a controllable environment. However,
at the time, remember in the desert when we shot the opening?
Yeah,
that got windy and crazy.
So yeah, exactly. So you probably know this by looking at Tabitha and myself. If you go to our websites and to our on social media, we spend a tremendous amount of time filming in extremely wild outdoor locations, a lot of our time. And so, to answer your question very clearly, yeah, we have a lot of days in our world where it's either just way too cold or way too hot, or the wind is blowing at 40 miles per hour. There's no way you're going to get good sound. You're being sandblasted, or the area is snake infested or whatever it is. I mean, we've dealt with literally every kind of crazy element you can imagine. So the way that we shoot is a little bit different. And it was actually funny because Esther Gabrielle, who's the other producer with Tabitha on this film, and then Corey Coleman, who's her husband, was also producing. At one point, we had set the schedule up such that most of the studio shooting was to be done, and I kept pushing off some shots to what we call pickup days, where we basically would reschedule and shoot different shots in different days, and that kind of confused her at first. And what I said was, over the years, I've developed a style, because we do our own production. We don't have a studio, over the top of us barking at us all the time. And because it's, self-financed, it's the same situation. We can control it. So what I like to do is I like to get the meat of the show done, and then I like to leave it really open for additional shooting. So, for instance, with Die Influencers Die, we probably had 5 or 6 or 7 days of shooting that were parts of which were on the original schedule. But I said, no. I really want to expand this and make this better. Let's push this off, do this on a different day. And so we're really super flexible with schedule. And I think that that's important with the project, especially low-budget horror films, because I think these kinds of projects tend to sort of take on a life of their own. And if you're smart about it, you let them take a life of their own. You don't force it, because the universe, or whatever you want to call it, sort of intervenes and says, look, this is what you want this film to be, but guess what? This is what it's going to be. And I think that you need to be open to that. And when, as a filmmaker, and the producing in, the directing in, the creative in, even in editorially, if you allow that to happen, really super cool things can happen.
And I'd like to interject on that one. That's like the opening of our film. We shot that way later. That was an afterthought. That was not even in the script. And we decided, you know what? Let's start it off with a bang. Instead of, kind of making the audience wait to see a kill scene, let's see something happen real fast. So that was kind of like we saved that one too for, for how many months after we had shot the film.
And that was perfect, great example, because see, Jeff Tortora is in our film. Jeff Tortora is a longtime drummer in the Blue Man Group, so a lot of people would know that.
Oh yeah, they're up here in Boston all the time.
Yeah.
And so he and there, of course, they've been permanently in Vegas for, I think, more than 20 years.
Okay.
But Jeff, he's in the movie. We love Jeff. He's a madman. And
he plays the Max character.
Yeah, the Max. He sent over a music track they've been working on. And he said, hey, if you want to use this for the film, go for it. And when we heard the track, it sort of created this idea for a new opening scene, which would have a kill scene in it. And that track is really what sparked it. And that was after we had already shot all the main unit. It was months later.
Actually, it was way after.
And we said, wow, let's take advantage of this and incorporate this. What a great way to start the film, with this sort of 2-minute, almost like a crazy kill scene music video before you even get to the main credits, the main titles.
How is it working with some of the other actresses in it? Now, all the women in this, are they from the adult film industry, like Katie Morgan?
Not everyone. Myself, yes. Katie Morgan, absolutely.
Deborah Dark.
No, she's not. This is her first time. I don't know. Has she done a film? I don't think she's done maybe a little bit of a film.
Not as the lead, but Deborah Dark is the quintessential
heavy
metal.
Gwendolyn.
She plays the role of Gwendolyn in the movie, and she was a first timer. She was a newbie, and I think that the girl that played
the beginning
influencer scene with Stu, where we kind of make fun of influencers with the Stu character early on, and there's a shot where there's a supermodel who he's paying, and he has her disrobe, and he puts a cocktail glass kind of on her butt, and he's drinking off of that. And I think that was maybe one of her first roles as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's about
I think it's just, yeah, we didn't want to fill it. I mean, there's so many girls from the industry that I love, that I thought would have been great in our film, but I told Gary, we don't want it to become, it's just some kind of like porn film, because it's not. And some people might think, because of the names that are attached to it, that it might be more leaning towards that way, whereas Katie Morgan has great mainstream credits. I had some great mainstream credits, and I'm you know, at one point I was almost like a regular guest on the Howard Stern show. So it's like people know our names, so you can not only from adult but from other things as well. So we just didn't want to make this film all about like adult film stars, because like even Tommy Pistol, who's a great guy, we had thought of maybe casting him in a role for something, but then it was like, you know what? Let's say it's too much. It's too much. So let's just separate, and maybe in the next one we'll put, you know, like Tommy Pistol in the next one.
But I have to. I want to jump in too and just mention, you know, we have, you know, from the rock and roll world, we have Lizzie Borden in the film, and Lizzie was huge in the late '80s, and Lizzie is. I was very surprised to find out he hadn't really done many, if any, movies. Certainly not a lead in a horror film, and he was fantastic. He was just brilliant as our kind of grim reaper-esque sort of character in this thing.
Oh, he was a natural with this. This is what he's supposed to. Other than music, Lizzie should be like acting in horror films, because.
And for those who don't know Lizzie Borden, his show over the years is incredibly cinematic and theatrical. So what he does is he wears these sort of hideous, wild masks that he has custom made. He does like fake kill scenes with tons of blood and a strong heavy metal music. It's very vibrant, very intense. But he was an obvious when it came to.
He brings girls. He has girls. He looks like he's killing the girls on stage. So
while he's performing.
And then I have to say too, have to mention this. Frankie Rivers, who plays Stu Harrington. I think that guy is going to go places, because he is.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He is awesome.
He's kind of he's like a real young version of maybe. He looks a little bit like a Jim Carrey, and he is a brilliant actor, and he really, really brought incredible. Look, let's be honest. A lot of these low-budget horror films have terrible performances. The acting is just downright rotten. And that was one of the first things we said when we went into this thing was, look, we want good performances. We want a good little story. We don't want it to be just a bunch of kids go out in the woods in a cabin and start killing them off with no story whatsoever. We did not want to do that. We wanted to have a little tiny little social statement at the very end, the last 30 seconds of the film. But we wanted a good story. We wanted good performances. We want great bloody kill scenes. We want sexy girls, you know, your requisite shower scene and so forth, and great, strong, powerful, heavy metal music. So going all the way back, circling around your original question, yeah, we do have a few adult stars in it, but it's pretty well-rounded. We have non-adult stars, and we even have a rock star in it.
And the biggest thing I know Katie Morgan from was the Zack and Miri Make a Porno film, and her HBO specials where she talked about, it was like a sex education show on HBO that she did nude, which was hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, no, she's awesome. Katie is so great to work with, and talk about being prepared. I have to say that out of everyone in the cast, she and Frankie were the most prepared, ready to go. I mean, they were amazing. We are so grateful that we have these two in our cast. And Katie's just, and she's so pretty. So on top of that, on top of the great acting and everything, you look at her and you're like, oh.
Oh my God, yeah, she's absolutely stunningly beautiful. I mean, all the time.
Yeah. Right, and I think the thing with Katie is, and I keep saying this, and I'll keep saying it, is that, you know, she sort of gets pigeonholed in the adult world because of all the things that she's done. And I think that's unfortunate that she is pigeonholed, because she could be performing in any mainstream project as an actor. She's fantastic. She's really skilled. So when you see these people on social media and in the outside world sort of bagging, oh, well, she's just a porn star, that's bullshit, man. You know what? You know, humans are humans, whether they, you know, do porn or not or whatever. And it doesn't mean that someone isn't incredibly good at what they do and a really wonderful person to work with. And Katie is absolutely that. She should be getting more mainstream roles.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Darcy, Diana Prince from the Drive-In Horror Show. You know, she transitioned out of porn into a lot of Scream Queen B-movie roles, and now she's co-host with Joe Bob Briggs. And, you know, she's insanely knowledgeable of horror movies. I had her on the show like 4 or 5 years ago before she was even on Drive-In Horror Show, and her horror knowledge was just, unbelievable.
Well, here's the funny thing. I reached out to her to be in the film, and she couldn't do it. There was it was a weird scheduling conflict, and that's when we had Devorah come in, and she did the role instead. But I actually had reached out to Darcy, and because we had shot her years and years ago for a demand project, and I liked her. She's so nice, very, very sweet girl. It makes me happy to see people who are from the adult world being able to, cross over into that more mainstream, and without people totally picking on them. I mean, it's tough. It's not easy because we do get that. Anytime you talk on social media about anything other than adult stuff, it's like, oh, just shut up. You're just a porn star. And it's like, people, stop. And you're the one who watches it. So who are you?
I think things are a lot different, like today, and by today I mean the last several years, versus like 25 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe when you first started. And because I'm not going to profuse to be an expert on your career, Tabitha, to know how far back it goes, but there's definitely a difference in like how people could transition out of one thing into another, and that includes like stuff from just going from like television to movies. I mean, television was always the toxic environment of the entertainment industry that nobody from TV would be in a movie, and nobody from a movie would be in a TV show.
Right, and it's all incredibly silly. Case in point, so I am probably best known for my HBO shows that I produce with HBO for Cinemax. Now, they play worldwide on HBO and domestically on Cinemax.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I was like, so HBO owns Cinemax?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So my deals, my relationship is with HBO, and then they play domestically North America on Cinemax. They've been around the world on different versions like HBO Olay, HBO Latin, Prague, etc. And so here's the thing, though. Playing to what you just said, and that is that these are late night softcore sort of erotica, right? But what people don't, and so I'm sort of known for these shows, and I created, produced, and directed more than 50 episodes and 14 movies and blah blah blah. But what people don't realize is, oh, you do those late night Cinemax ones as if it's some sort of it's a lower grade or something else. But what people don't realize is when you do produce shows like that, first of all, it's very, very, very hard to become, an HBO, certified producer director. The second thing is that our QC standards, basically quality control standards, what we deliver to them has to pass the same standards as, say, like a Game of Thrones, like the very top projects. So just because you're producing these shows that are late night erotica, you're still held to the same standard in terms of the QC, right? In terms of the quality of the show that you deliver. So in terms of the technical aspects of it, it's exactly the same. Yet we're sort of looked down upon sometimes as, oh, well, you're not producing Game of Thrones, you're producing the erotic traveler or hotel erotica. That's somehow less important, less powerful, less difficult to do, which is complete bullshit.
And they still watch it.
And the same applies to the adult world. Not with respect to the QC, the quality control. Well, I'm not going to paint that picture. But in terms of the performers, some of the top end performers in the adult world have to be very, very good at what they do. They honestly do, just as if they were acting or performing in a mainstream project. It's different, it's sex and these kinds of things. But I'm telling you, not anybody off the street is going to be able. Think about the guys. You think every Joe Schmo off the street is going to be able to walk into an adult set and perform? Please, not a chance.
But even some mainstream actors, if you were to put them in that situation, let's say, do you think that they could do it? There's no way.
Did you ever see the movie, which was it's a teen comedy set in the porn world, The Girl Next Door?
Oh, wasn't that about Stacey Valentine?
I don't know who that was about, but I mean, it starred the daughter from the 24 TV series as a, like a 19. Yeah. She's like a 19, 20-year-old porn star who moves in next door to this, high school senior, and he's introduced to her pornographic world.
I haven't seen the movie, but I do know it. I do know what you're talking about with it. So, yeah, it's hard for me, and I will admit this, to watch anything that when people are kind of poking fun at adults. I mean, Boogie Nights is a little different, and I have a hard time because they don't always get it right.
Well, they usually screw it up.
Put it down,
And let's be honest, it's, the fact that the whole adult world, I guess, is becoming a lot about, backing up the adult world is it's very hypocritical. People are so quick to bash it and whatnot, yet most people are consumers of it. So it's such a weird thing.
Yeah, so it's hard sometimes because, yeah.
And then there's like documentaries out there like Hot Girl Wanted, which is on Netflix.
I haven't seen that. We were in, actually, After Porn Ends, the second one, and I had Gary come in with me. So we did that one. And, yeah, you do have stories, though, which are interesting. Some stories are, very positive, and then there's some that are really sad.
Oh, my God. I couldn't believe the number of porn stars who have committed suicide. I was like, are you serious?
Well, it's like rock stars, right?
Same thing. Look at how many rock stars. And comedians. I mean, we're all the same kind of, we deal with a lot, and we're under pressure. I know people think, oh, yeah, it must be tough to be you. Well, yeah, it is. It kind of is. It's not easy.
It takes incredible courage, and it takes incredible courage to do it in the first place as a performer. I'm speaking. Incredible. Think about it. It takes incredible courage, and knowing you're going to be, vilified and knocked down and beaten up and pigeonholed,
your whole life,
treated like trash. It's really ridiculous. The whole situation. So you have to have incredibly thick skin. You've got to be very strong-willed to say, look, no. I like this. This is cool. It's hard work, but you've really got to be strong. You really do.
Yep.
Why don't you guys give away your social media where people can find you, and as well as the film?
Sure. I am at Miss MISS Tab Stevens. So it's MISSTABSTEVENS. And that's both on Instagram and on Twitter. You'll know it's me because I'm verified, so I have a little blue check mark next to me, so you'll know it's me.
The film's website is guyinfluencersguy.com, and that's where people should go if they want to find out where it's playing on what platform. My Twitter handle is at Gary_Orona. Orona spelled ORONA. And all the information.
Everything's up on our pages.
we also have fine art photography galleries, and the website for that is savageterritory.com.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday after the first attempt at this. I saw your gallery of art and pictures, Gary. All of it was beautiful and fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. And that all, of course, speaks to a different market and a different audience. But we call it Savage Territory because for years we traveled into really, really wild landscapes. And, we're trying to shoot places that have never been photographed before. So that's a lot of fun.
So we have a film, we got photography. So that's kind of what keeps us busy.
Good, yeah. And you guys also hit the conventions whenever that actually becomes a thing again. You could tour this film at horror conventions whenever we get back to conventions next year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're excited. We're going to take Lizzie with us. We'll get Katie can come on board. We're trying to grab the cast. And
come to Massachusetts. Come to Salem.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. I would have Tom Devlin come, too. I think Moxie needs to be made up into character and show up. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. And if you guys come to Massachusetts, you have to stop by the Radio of Horror Studios in WCUW in Worcester.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking you up on that.
Okay, definitely. You can reach me on Twitter. Thank you so much for coming back to redo this.
Oh, hey, no worries, guys.
Awesome.
You're awesome. We love you. This has been great, and we really appreciate it.